Before I begin, you can expect spoilers for Signalis, Devil May Cry, Bloodborne, Slay the Princess, a few other games. You've been warned. How many times do you replay a game? Once? Twice? 10 times? 0 times? Personally, I don't replay games very often. For me, that first experience of a playthrough, getting to discover both the fun mechanics and how it blends them with a story I haven't heard yet, is my favorite part of a game. That isn't to say I never replay games, I'm not crazy. I've done my fair share of Elden Ring runs, trying unconventional builds or unusual weapons, or giving up on sorcery for the 5th time. I've dabbled in sequence breaking in Fallout New Vegas, bullheadedly sprinting through Deathclaw Canyon, and yes, I have played Baldur's Gate 3. The number of times I ran through the flesh halls of the Nautiloid is too high to count. But those are all RPGs. And not only that, but one of them is an entirely open-world RPG, while the other two are pseudo-open-world RPGs. If video games are appealing because they allow us to participate in media, because they make us players, then it makes sense why these games are so eminently repeatable. I mean, how could you not replay these games? In theory, each choice you make in one of these games compounds on itself, creating a domino effect of new choices. Choices that didn't exist until you made the previous choice. And that choice itself only really existed because of the choice you made before it. And that one from the one before that one, and I mean all the way back to character creation. And character creation on its own is a huge reason to want to replay a game. I mean, right away, at minute 0, you get to create your own character and start making choices. What better way, what more immediate way could you participate in a video game? Just consider how long you spent in that Baldur's Gate 3 character creator wanting to get the vibe just right. RPGs speak to a very special place in my heart as both a video game nerd and a role-playing nerd. Being able to have a presence in the story as not just anyone, but my character, is an empowering feeling. Going back through Elden Ring and getting to see how I can affect the fate of the lands between, either by unleashing the destined death, or by becoming the new Elden Lord, is a powerful incentive to revisit those lands time and time again. Personally, I prefer freeing the frenzied flame. In a world that appeared to be hell-bent on repeating itself, trapped in a never-ending cycle of lords who rise and fall, I found myself reaching for the matches to burn it all down. Though there are other games, some without character creation, and some without any narrative choice to be made. And just as I found myself venturing back through Elden Ring, or hiking across the Mojave Desert, or getting a tadpole shoved in my eye again, I found myself eager to relive what I had already lived dozens of times before, despite not having any chance to change the story. But before I talk about that, I have to talk about how devils never cry. Okay, so there's this song in Devil May Cry 3 that absolutely hits. Like, it really hits. It's so good. It has the perfect mix of mid-2000s metal with somehow a religious choir thrown into the mix. And I know it sounds crazy, but I swear it works. The song is called Devils Never Cry, if you want to look it up. If you wanted to hear it in-game, however, it's a bit more demanding. See, in Devil May Cry 3, the track only plays in full at the end of the game, during what is essentially a credits sequence. There's technically a remix of it earlier in the game, but it has certain elements of the full track missing. It doesn't hit quite the same as the full track. It is, however, still hype as hell, doubly so for the moment you get to taste it in-game. The point at which you hear the remix is just after one of the coolest fights in the game, and, up to that point, one of the hardest. In the moment, Dante has yet to fully realize his power as a half-demon, whereas his brother Virgil has. Dante hasn't actually activated his Devil Trigger yet, a thing that will soon become a major component of his arsenal. So thematically, it makes sense. We don't get the full track there, and Dante is not yet a fully realized half-demon there. Only at the end does both Dante become a devil who cries, and achieve his full potential. And this is also true of the player. You see, Devil May Cry as a video game series has an infamous replayability trick, one that started in earnest with DMC4, but just humor me here. Once you beat the game, you unlock harder difficulty modes. Not a crazy innovation in and of itself, it certainly didn't start with Devil May Cry, but DMC4 does it a bit different. See, these harder difficulties were ways to challenge your credentials as a gamer, right? You successfully complete the game on normal, and it's almost like the game speaks to you. Beat the game on normal? Okay, tough guy, how about Devil Hunter mode? And you think, wait, why isn't that difficulty called hard? Hard always comes after normal, right? Normally, you'd be right. And if we're to take this difficulty naming convention as in-universe context, then the difficulty after normal is, by all accounts, the intended Dante experience. I mean, look at it. Devil Hunter mode. Again, it's like the game is almost mocking you, taunting you by going, I know you aren't a real Devil Hunter, so you can play on this easier difficulty for now. And hey, maybe once you're good enough, you can actually play as a Devil Hunter. And if you don't believe me when I tell you that, then you don't know how to unlock easy mode in Devil May Cry 3.
And he's got that, and that is the end.
So let's just pretend for a second we're all crazy good, stylish, experienced Devil Hunters. We all beat the game on normal. Hooray, we're really good. Then we go back and beat the game on Devil Hunter. Hooray, we're even better. Only, once you beat the game on Devil Hunter, you unlock a slightly harder difficulty again. You unlock Son of Sparda mode. Now, for the non-Devil May Cry lore buffs in the audience, Dante is one of two sons. The son of a mondo-powerful devil named Sparda. For a long time I thought it was Sparta with a T, so I don't blame you if you also thought that, but I digress. So we're all crazy, competent gamers, and competent Devil Hunters, so we just beat the game twice, and only now we're seeing Son of Sparda mode, which means the difficulty we just beat, Devil Hunter, that's not even referring to Dante. That's just talking about a generic devil hunting person, which in lore exists. There are people who do that. Lady, arguably the female protagonist of Devil May Cry 3, is exactly one of those. In Devil May Cry 1, it was Trish. There are categorically devil hunters, but they aren't a son of Sparda. So, being the incredibly talented gamers we are, we beat this mode. We truly can't play as Dante, a son of Sparda, and say we're a Devil May Cry fan unless we beat it on the true to Dante difficulty, right? You have to get the real experience. Right. And now, for the third time, we hear the baddest track in the game, credits roll, and there's another new difficulty. The legendary Dark Knight mode. No, not him. Sparda, the demon I previously mentioned, was also referred to as the legendary Dark Knight Sparda. Meaning now that we've beaten the game for a third time, we now have the chance to attempt to beat the game as Dante's father. The most powerful demon to have ever lived. Once again, the game taunts us and asks, can you do it? Are you that good? Are you as good as the legendary Dark Knight Sparda? Well, in this example, we absolutely are. Now, at this point, we would have beaten the game at least 4, maybe 5 times if we beat it on normal and easy. Each time progressively getting more and more challenging. Again and again, we've beaten Cerberus, we've beaten Burial, we've beaten Agni and Rudra, we've beaten Baal and Dagon, we've beaten Cerberus 2. We've seen these bosses, we know their patterns, and we have, finally, achieved a status that few Devil May Cry players will ever get to. Legendary Dark Knight. We are, canonically, as powerful and capable as Dante's legendary father. But still, the game asks for more, albeit in a strange way. What waits beyond Legendary Dark Knight mode is something of a gimmick. We unlocked Heaven or Hell mode. So curiosity gets the better of us. This difficulty has no moniker or canonical theme to it, so we're left to wonder what it even means. And we go back in. For the 5th or 6th time. What's one more run gonna hurt, right? So the essence of Heaven or Hell mode is reaction speed and precision. Damage values are cranked to the roof. It becomes a game of quick draw now. Each enemy can near instantly kill Dante, or whomever you're playing as, in one hit, but the same is true for you as well. As you can imagine, guns become incredibly valuable here, far more so than just the combo extender they were in previous difficulties. Boss fights go quick. Almost too quick. Only ever really killing the momentum when certain invincibility phases get in the way of rapidly declining health bars. The brief pause in boss fights where you were able to reassess and regroup mentally now become an open space to be filled with the frantic presses of whatever button is mapped to your gun. This run of the game doesn't take so long compared to the previous runs, and even to the casual gamer, kind of leaves us with a sense of, really? That's it? But there's one more difficulty to be introduced. Successfully waltzing through Heaven or Hell mode rewards you with yet another fresh surprise. Hell and Hell mode. It's exactly what you think it means. Enemies return to their natural state of lethality and durability, relegating Ebony and Ivory back to being a combo extender tool, but the twist is that you are still playing on the previous difficulty's fragility. Enemies will kill you easily. Bosses need only graze you to set you to 0. Common mooks with ranged weapons are now long-range executioners who have no patience for your dodging and blocking, while melee mooks charge at you with the same reckless abandon they always have, only with far more to gain and far less to lose. The insane durability of cutscene Dante is nothing but a distant memory at this point. We've reached the peak of this challenge ladder. Can you get through the game when not one, not several, but every enemy can knock you out if you accidentally miss your Royal Guard parry? For your sake, I hope you saved all of your gold orbs for this part of the game. Looking back through this ringer of a cruel march, whether it be Devil May Cry 3 or Devil May Cry 4 or hell, even Devil May Cry DMC, there's always something that stuck out to me. In a way, you're kind of stuck in a loop. How many times do you run through all of DMC fighting the same bosses, the same mooks with the same weapons, and then there's the endings, or rather, ending, singular. You see, there's a lot of ways we see the end of a game change. The story in any DMC game is, through each path, largely the same. Sure, you'll see the different things while treading through the Virgil story as opposed to the Dante story in Devil May Cry 3. He's obviously experienced Temeni Gru in a totally different way than his brother, mostly, but there isn't a Virgil ending. In every loop, the DMC games, you find that Dante, Virgil, Lady, Trish, Nero, and everyone else ends exactly where they always end. There isn't a way you can traverse the story of Devil May Cry 4 where Credo survives. There is no ending to Devil May Cry 4 where Dante doesn't walk off into the sunset, lackadaisically throwing up his two-finger salute, saying goodbye to Nero for however many years it took to get to UMC5. There's not an ending where Kyrie dies before Nero can save her. No matter how good you are, no matter what difficulty you play on, whether it's Legendary Dark Knight, or Dante Must Die, or Human, at the end of the story, you always defeat Sanctus. You always stop Virgil. And the credits always roll. At the end of the game, you know the status of things. It's a little disheartening. You see, if you think about it, the story has already happened. Fate, or universal determinism, or God, whatever you want to label it, has already ordained that these things happen. These aren't just fixed points a la Spider-Verse rules. These are supremely fixed points, so fixed that there isn't a way to change them. The road you travel in DMC has already been built for you, down to the mission select screen. You don't get to decide which way to turn, you only get to decide how hard you press on the gas pedal. But some games give you a few roads to travel, with twists and turns, weaving together into a betentacled nightmare, all of which inevitably come crashing together in the end. Bloodborne. Oh yeah, it's a real video essay now. Bloodborne, the From Software 2015 seminal masterpiece, presents you with a similarly fixed kind of ride. At least at first. A gothic nightmare that leads you, the lone hunter, on a path of discovery and death through the blood-soaked streets of Yharnam, a city that's been entirely subsumed in the gore and darkness wrought from decisions of those in powerful places. Now, if you've played Bloodborne, or watched someone else talk about it, you know the story already. But if you don't mind a quick recap, you begin this journey where you always do, in the abandoned hospital of Blood Healing. Barely conscious and dying, you see the ghosts crawl over your body, and you hear a strange man tell you,
"Whatever happens, you may think it all to be a bad dream."
you know where this road leads.
Prepare yourself for the worst.
Our eyes are yet to open. Fear the old blood.
You tread through the twisted labyrinthian streets of Yharnam, seeing the warped and deranged citizens, or the beasts soaked in blood. Curiosity compels you, and you enter the city of Old Yharnam, a place that almost everyone forgot.
There's nothing more horrific than a hunt.
It's there you learn,
In case you fail to realize, the things you hunt, they're not beasts. They're people.
Eventually, you'll walk to Bergenworth College and discover notes of fascination and blood history. Not long after that, you will behold the nightmare visage of the School of Mensis. With every step you take, you get closer and closer to something. The truth? Death? Life? It's hard to say, but still, you go onward. Maybe even more than once. Probably more than once. But at the end of this road, you are offered a choice. Die and reawaken from the endless repeating nightmare to a new dawn. Or Reject the sweet goodnight offered to you and search for a deeper meaning inside it all. On one path, you wake up to the real world, or at least what looks to be the real world, and it's tomorrow. You get to see the sun. On the other, you fight back against Gehrman, your mentor, and when you beat him, the moon presence drifts down from its perch to grant you what you've rightfully earned by defeating him. His place at the helm of this secret dream, forever to stand guard as he once did, in service of the moon. Oh, and there is one more ending. But you already knew that, didn't you? The last ending requires a few hidden items. What hidden items, you ask? Umbilical cords. You need precisely 3 umbilical cords, which you eat to unlock the final ending. The final ending being you beating Gehrman, using the latent eldritch powers bequeathed unto you to reject the moon god's embrace, fight and kill the moon god, then be reborn as a new infant god squid. Now, there's a lot of games that like to label the different endings you can access as good endings or bad endings. But here? Is Kill Alien Moon good ending? Is Wake Up the bad ending? I don't know, man. Where do you even start with that? But believe it or not, that isn't what surprises me most about Bloodborne. What surprises me is knowing all of this, knowing the potential to kill an eldritch outer god and take its place. That path is available right away. Compared to DMC, a game which only gives you one ending every single time, but tacitly expects you to beat it multiple times, it's kind of crazy, isn't it? But assuming you didn't use a guide for Bloodborne, how many times did it take you to figure that out? How many times did you have to run through the night, fighting beasts, dying, being reborn from the nightmare? How many times did you either end up serving Gehrman or serving as Gehrman for the moon presence? How many hunts did you go through before you finally escaped? How many times did you accidentally get someone else killed in this pursuit?
You needn't concern yourself with me.
Maybe Mum and Dad are stuck out there, waiting for me to come and find them. What do you think, Mr. Hunter? This is a nightmare. Mr. Hunter, was it really her? Mummy? Mummy? Leave me alone.
And, more importantly, did you actually escape with that last ending? Signalis is a 2022 survival horror game made by Rose Engine. If you're anything like me, and if you're watching this video, you kinda are, you probably love survival horror. Signalis is very much a spiritual successor to your Silent Hills and your Resident Evils and the similar titles. At the beginning of the game, Elster, the protagonist, departs a crashed ship, the Penrose. It's been grounded in a snowdrift. You're the only one aboard, but you're not the sole survivor. You take with you a photograph. Ariane. She's your goal. She's your purpose. Your promise. You have to find her. You have to get her back, no matter how long or arduous the journey may be, no matter how many times it takes. It takes a lot of time to really come to grips with all the different threads that Signalis presents you with. The Gestalt consciousnesses, people who are the basis for a type of pseudo-cloning/replication process. The replicas, the resulting product of this pseudo-cloning process, who exist entirely as a subservient underclass of quote-unquote people. But again, these are categorically those people. Despite being both socially and cybernetically engineered to be servile, they have the memories of the Gestalt in them. Effectively multiple copies of the same person, all made and engineered to do the same thing, all living together. All of this runs in parallel with the last thread, the game's cosmic force, a subtle but pervasive and inescapable thing called bioresonance. Bioresonance being a sort of interconnected energy that both feeds off of life and seeds life. A thing that mutates and metastasizes, making vibrating red tumors, endlessly copying themselves over and over. Sorry. I got a little distracted. Signalis has multiple endings, just like Bloodborne, though this time there are 4 distinct endings, a fact that most will only find out from post-game Google searches. The 4th ending is, to put it lightly, obscure. This 4th ending, the artifact ending, is deeply entrenched in the game's story, and nearly impossible to find without outside help. You see, this ending requires a series of secret keys, 3 of them to be exact. No, you don't eat them this time. Each of these keys can be found in a different chapter throughout the game as you progress. However, they aren't simply hidden in a chest or behind some carefully placed level geometry. Their hiding spot is far more sinister. You see, as the game progresses, you'll eventually experience an unusual flashback. It's within this flashback you'll obtain a receiver radio, very on brand for a Silent Hill-like. This radio can be tuned across a band of radio waves and, depending on your current physical location, be used to solve certain puzzles or reveal hidden caches of goods. But as you steel yourself, wading through the enemies and flesh and violence, you'll need to step into 3 specific rooms on your way through the game. In each room, you'll need to tune to a very specific frequency, which is only vaguely hinted at. At these correct frequencies, and while standing in these correct locations, you will be greeted with beeps, chirps, noises, not music. These signals are actually slow-scan television signals. I learned this from a Power Pack video, which, if you haven't seen it, you should go watch it. It's great. But nevertheless, after you tune to the correct frequency at these specific locations, you'll be able to acquire the key. The kicker is that were you to avoid using a guide, the sequence in which you decode these images that are no longer available to you by the time that you would decode them. That means there are 3 keys, and you would have to be able to know which image is where, which frequency goes to each one, and where they all are prior to getting them. And the cherry on top of all of this is that none of the keys even spawn until you've beaten the game at least once. Putting the secret ending aside for a moment, to get one of the other 3 endings, you have to adapt your playstyle accordingly. Each ending having different demands for you as a player to follow by through all the layers of hell you've already jumped down. Were you to try and brave the labyrinthian puzzle dynamics, you'd quickly start to see a pattern emerge. How many times have you been here? How many times have you had to finish this game to get the ending you want? Adler, the game's primary antagonist, has had to deal with you countless times, and countless times he's succeeded, and countless times he's failed. You'll destroy everything. You selfish monster. What waits beyond the threshold? You've been here countless times, but you've never returned. How many endings does it finally take? How many people truly ended their time with Signalis thinking Elster died trying to pry open the hatch to the Penrose? I know at least a few people who believed that things ended there. How many endings did you get? How many endings did you look up online? Why do you keep doing the same thing over and over and Slay the Princess is a 2023 horror game with a very unusual premise, but one that is so incredibly addicting. In it, you're
on a path in the woods, and at the end of that path is a cabin. And in the basement of that cabin is a princess.
How you choose to deal with this is, in a lot of ways, like a TTRPG. That's a tabletop role-playing game for those of you who aren't acronym-friendly. The many questions and responses make it feel like you have nearly infinite options before you, despite it being a video game where choices are inherently limited. While the game isn't mechanically engaging in the same way that Bloodborne or Signalis or Devil May Cry are, Slay the Princess does something that none of these other games can do. It shows you the threads of the story laid bare. All of what games are, all of what anything is, put on display. It is very intricate but deceptively simple. You, whoever you are trekking through the woods upon a path with seemingly no background information. At least no more background than precisely what the narrator tells you. The narrator who insists he has no ulterior motive than saving the world by, of course, having you slay the princess. You don't need to know where you came from. You don't need to know what was. Only what's next. And what's next is slaying the princess. Probably. It depends on whether you have more spite or trust in video game narrators. But if you listen to this narrator, you arrive at the cabin. You enter and you see the pristine blade. It is your implement. The details are sparse. The space is liminal in function, only here to give you a brief pause before her. You descend into the basement, and before you see her, you hear her.
Who's there?
She sounds menacing.
Hello? Is someone there?
She sounds innocent. You enter the basement fully, and see her, finally. Hard and calculated. Soft and naive. This is the first time you've seen her, and it will be the last. No matter what choices you make, the nature of the princess is quantum, and once you observe her, probability begins its inevitable collapse into certainty. Slay the Princess is not a time loop game. but it is a loop. You are part of a cycle, whether you know it or not. You are trapped in a very similar way to the princess. This game is meta, and that's putting it very lightly. I won't say too much more. You should experience it for yourself if you can. But in contrast to the other games mentioned, Slay the Princess's gameplay is the endings. Each successive loop tightens around your character like a noose, new information flooding your mind, drowning you, each ending along the way, helping you to peel back the layers of it all. Each new end helping color in the details of this black and white world you're presented with. This game is obsessed with happening over and over and over again, and it refuses to let you out of this loop until you learn exactly what you need to learn, or do exactly what you need to do. And the more you resist, the more the world starts to melt around you. But soon you'll see that even that is just another part of the loop. Trying to defy the loop, trying to exert your spite against it is just another loop.
You've heard of it, haven't you? The legend of Sparda? How do I know? I met the sons of Sparda. Both of them. Though the same blood of their father flowed through their veins, the two battled each other fiercely like arch enemies.
You know,
It seems as if they derived some
I'm
sort
starting
of
to think
twisted pleasure from
this is never gonna end. Maybe. We got plenty of time.
Though something in the back of my mind hesitates with all this. Despite the way these games frame their replaying mechanics, I don't really feel trapped by these games. And I imagine that no one else really does either. See, the thing about being trapped has a certain kind of implication to it. That it happened to someone unsuspectingly, and that the person trapped is trying to escape. And while some of these games have very subtly caught us unawares, going through multiple playthroughs before we realize it, there's a distinct lack of a need to escape. Hell, maybe we're all being brainwashed with some kind of advanced form of video game-based Stockholm Syndrome, but what I think is more likely is that we're not falling for these traps, if you can call them that, by mistake. We finish one of these games and are left to ruminate on our feelings as the credits roll. We stew in that sensation for maybe days or hours or minutes, and after that, we throw ourselves back in willingly. No, we aren't tricked or bamboozled by the gameplay of these games. We're diving back in head first, whatever our reasons for. We gleefully select Begin Again, or Restart Journey, or Mission 1. We arm ourselves with our previous knowledge and are warmed by our previous experiences.
And forward we go. We shouldn't keep her waiting.
And maybe we're a little bit insane for doing the same thing over and over again, but in a lot of ways we're not expecting different results. We know exactly what we want, and we know exactly where to get it.
And we love you too.